Welcome back to the Scotti-BYTE channel, and this is Scott. So a really key element in self-hosting is a great internet service provider connection. And there's so many different ways that you can connect to your internet service provider and choice of internet service providers out there today. I wanted to go over some of the basics here. So kind of to begin with, a critical part of your self-hosting infrastructure is the service that you receive from whatever ISP you happen to choose. Internet service has become ubiquitous with the service models that we expect from a utility. That is like your gas company, your electric company, whatever. And this is particularly true since ISPs often provide home phone service, and that usually also includes E911 service. And since that's the case, they often have to make sure that they have infrastructure in their system for things like backup power generators and so on to be able to provide that phone service in the event of an emergency. So in many locations in the US, you have little choice in ISP or the service that you actually receive. Self-hosting is all about choice, privacy, and control of your data. So recently in the US, they passed this thing called the US Infrastructure Bill. And in this recently passed bill, they set aside $65 billion for broadband service improvements. It remains to see how much of this will actually make it into improvements for broadband, because as I understand, like many other bills that were recently passed, a large amount of them ended up being redirected for the support of the Ukrainian people. So the Broadband Equity, Access, and Deployment Program, otherwise known as BEAD, defines $42 billion of that $65 billion for what they call unserved and underserved areas. And this was particularly pointed out as a problem during the pandemic, when many of the schools were able to operate virtually, but in some of the underserved neighborhoods, they were unable to have connectivity. So under this plan, each state receives an initial allocation of $100 million, which is used for broadband grants and also additional fundings based on the traditional FCC coverage maps. To receive funding, each state has to submit a 5-year plan, and that's supposed to identify the locations that are unserved or underserved and therefore prioritized for support. So it's a decent program, but it really doesn't address the woefully aged infrastructure that most ISPs now serving the majority of customers have. I mean, you can be in most states, and it's really remarkable the limitations of service you have. You may have broadband service, but the broadband service may not provide a very high level of availability, or it just may not provide decent speeds or decent latency. So here's an example of service, and in my particular case, I have Comcast Xfinity service, and I drew two pictures here. The picture on the left, and I think what I'll do is I'll pop my video off here so that you can see the whole diagram. The picture on the left is a picture of what I do at home, where I've purchased a separate cable modem. I have a separate router, and therefore it has a local network, and then I have multiple wireless IPs throughout the house. I mean, popularly people are buying these mesh IPs for inside their house now, and that's a good thing because of what I'm about to discuss on the so-called standard equipment. And so therefore, if I have something connected to the local network, it might get an address on the local network like this PC here. And then I might have a wireless AP that hangs off the local network. And then there might be another PC that connects only wirelessly through that wireless AP. So in my particular case, I think that locally we have choices where I live of both Xfinity and also AT&T. And I've actually been on both of them over the years, and they both have pluses and minuses. But cable modem is one of the things that's really popular throughout the country, and it actually provides you some pretty decent connectivity. So in the case of Xfinity, they provide a low-end plan that they call Connect. It gives you a 50 megabit download speed and a 5 megabit upload speed, and it's $20 a month. So the first thing you'll notice about these cable modem plans is almost exclusively current cable modem plans tend to be asymmetric. That is that their download and upload speed are wildly different. They usually provide a pretty good download speed, which they market. They say we have blindingly fast 50 megabits, but they don't. They forget conveniently to mention that they only have 5 megabits up. And then they have a plan called Connect More. It's twice as fast, 100 megabits, still 5 megabits up. And then they have a fast service, which is 300 down, and oh boy, it doubles the upload speed to 10 megabits. And then super fast, which has 600 megabits down, 15 megabits up, ultra fast 900 megabits down, 20 megabits up, and gigabit, which is 1200 megabits down and 35 megabits up. So the up speed is really important for people that want to self-host, and part of the reason for that is if you're serving something off your network. But even if you're not doing that, post-pandemic, chances are you're doing a lot of Zoom conferences and other video, which requires you to transmit off your network and not just receive. The other thing is a lot of people today are doing cloud backups. Well, those cloud services, you have to transmit all the data you have on your local network up to cloud storage, and that's going to use that upload speed as well. So upload speeds really count, and I've often said that even though I have the 1200 megabits or 1.2 gigabit down speed and 35 megabit up speed, I would be much happier with 500 megabits symmetric, both in the up and down direction. So another thing about this service is that it has a cap of 1.2 terabytes or 1200 gigabytes, and you actually pay $10 for each 50 gigabytes you use over 1200 gigabytes, and that's each month. And then you have a maximum of $100 of overage, so $10 per 50 gigabytes if you use 1050 gigabytes. Then you end up having 500 additional gigabytes. So in essence, at 1.7 terabytes, at that point, your data becomes, I don't know if I got that right or not. I think I did. Yeah, 1.7 terabytes, your data effectively becomes unlimited anyway. Or if you didn't want to pay that overage and you thought you were going to be over 1200 every month, then you would pay an additional $30 a month. So my objection to this is that if they manage their service properly, I don't think that they would need to charge a data cap. And many ISPs nowadays don't. To me, that's sort of Trey 1990s when we used to pay for minutes on cell phones. Nonetheless, that's what their policy is. So if we jump over here to the right-hand side of the diagram, it gets a little bit more interesting in that they're marketing something they call their xFi gateway. So this is one of those all-in-one devices that Xfinity wants you to use. Instead of buying your own cable modem, your own router, your own switches, and your own access points, which is what I've done because I believe it serves the self-hoster much better. This particular device is a cable modem built in, a router built in, and then their big marketing point is that it has a 6E Wi-Fi AP. And so, yeah, wireless 6E is really nice because, I mean, it's the fastest variant of Wi-Fi 6 that's available now. And it does has a new 6 gigabit range, which is really nice, 6 gigahertz range rather, which is really nice. and that 6 gigahertz range does provide faster transfers. Although that being said, there's very few Wi-Fi 6E devices on the market, so again, that's kind of pushing things. Well, what they don't really advertise to you very readily is that if you get one of these new xFi routers, first of all, you pay $14 a month rental for this, which really isn't all that bad, I suppose. But then they take a portion of your bandwidth that you're receiving from them, and if anybody is driving down the street and wants to connect, there is a isolated and security protected part of the router that allows them to make a connection to Xfinity Wi-Fi wherever they happen to be, and it just happens to go through your device. And I don't know, call me paranoid, but I really don't like the idea of sharing part of my bandwidth back that I've already paid for. And in the past, I've talked about Amazon Sidewalk, which does much the same type of thing. In any event, since the Wi-Fi is built in, here you have a Wi-Fi device out here, and it can make the connection. They also sell, or rent, I should say, additional access points that you can place around your house, mesh access points that can achieve a wider spread of Wi-Fi, because one of the big disadvantages, of course, in putting a Wi-Fi access point on your router is your router's probably stuffed under your desk somewhere, and it's not in the best location for transmission. And then likewise, the things connected to the network, they look pretty much the same. So these prices effectively, if you're paying, and I'm on some kind of a special right now for like 2 years, and I'm paying $70 a month. But if I want unlimited data, it means I'm paying $100 a month. But my real goal is not really to have the 1.2 gigabit download, even though I do have a modem that handles that, and I'm connected to a interface that handles that. It's nice to have the additional download, but really my real point is for self-hosters and really the people that work from home now, 35 megabits is really, really small. I would hope that this would be at least 10 times this. So just something I kind of noticed. So this is kind of their marketing page. If you go to your web page, they kind of, Xfinity kind of points you in this direction and says, so the xFi gateway plus the Xfinity app gives you all these benefits. And then they say, well, if you own your own equipment and also use their Xfinity app, which basically just says what your data usage is and your upload and download and so on, how it's performing and what your billing is and all those good things. They say that activating your Xfinity internet is equally easy in both cases and equally functional. You've got great tools in both cases, and you can get 24/7 help in both cases. But if you own your own equipment, they say, well, you can't protect your network. So, of course, those of you listening certainly understand that with your own equipment, you can protect your network and arguably even protect it better if you know what you're doing. And then they say, enjoy ultimate control. I can't help but to have a little tongue-in-cheek comment here. I think it means enjoy being ultimately controlled by Xfinity Comcast, because it basically says you're going to create your own Wi-Fi name and password, user profiles, and view your connected devices, and so can they. So, to me, you're going to be able to do that anyway. And have peace of mind with parental controls. Well, nowadays, parental controls and that sort of thing is really common that you can set up on routers. So I really like that capability. But to say that it doesn't exist on your own equipment, I think that goes a step in the wrong direction. But again, marketing, right? So then I use this Xfinity data logging tool. And on Docker Hub, there's this project here called Xfinity Data Usage, and I'll put it in the show notes down there. And it fetches the last 6 months of usage data and serves it with an HTTP endpoint on your network. And basically, you get this blob of data out that's one big giant record through a web page. And I parse that, and it gives you the last 6 months of your usage plus the current month on what's going on. And just to blow up the current month and a section of it, it just says that, so for example, this month, it's October right now. So October 1st is when it started. And October 31st is when this particular period ends. So this period is this month, right? And so far, I've used 191 gigabytes of data. And it says zero Wi-Fi usage. And the reason it says zero Wi-Fi usage is because I'm not using their Wi-Fi, so they can't tell what part of my usage is Wi-Fi. And they say the total usage is 191 because it's this home usage plus Wi-Fi, wired plus wireless, right, is equal to 191. And it says I'm allowed 1,229 gigabytes per month. So this is really nice because I use this app kind of built-in API here. And I parse that and I create a home dashboard. And so the home dashboard I use, one of the things I do on it is I come back and I, of course, can bring that total data usage this month, which is 191 gigabytes, you can see here. And then I divide the day of the month by this to determine what my average was per day and multiply that by the number of days in the month. And it says, well, if you keep going the way you've gone, then you should be using 740 gigabytes per month. And so it gives me kind of a tool to project where I'm going. And then the other thing I do on my little dashboard here, this is a Hubitat dashboard that I created very custom. It just comes back and tells me my internet status is up, and here's my WAN address, and it tells me when my internet was last down. It tells me when my power outage was last. I get that through my UPS's NUT driver. And then I also monitor my NUT driver statistics on both of my UPSs, the one in my rack and the other one I have in my computer room. So all this is great to track my connectivity and my data usage and all that sort of business. Okay, so basically, in summary, ISPs still control deployment of infrastructure in communities based on these historically created telco land maps. Okay, they go way, way back, 50 and 60 years of how the world was covered. And the consumer receives what is available, and cost is quite high in many instances. I mean, I said what it costs for me here. In a lot of rural areas, you could be paying way more. And in some areas of the country, you could be getting gigabit service that's gigabit over fiber, and it could be symmetric, and you could be paying a lot less than me. But gigabit service isn't available where I live in terms of fiber and being symmetric. So I think that's where we need to go in the country, but I don't think that's where we are at all right now. There's wide differences on where you live and what you receive. So basically, marketing drives price and availability. They'll put a product in place if they think they can sell it, and they'll sell it for the maximum available price. I mean, there's no price controls on these things, which is kind of ironic. And I do have to give Xfinity credit in that their sales price is pretty much the same nationwide, so they don't really differ by region, so to speak. But I think that their problem overall is the fact that they only deliver the price, they only deliver the products that they think that people will buy, and they deliver them at the so-called maximum selling price, MSRP, maximum suggested selling price, basically. So then, internet products are sold by download speeds only. So you always see them advertised, blazing fast gigabit internet. Yes, but is it really gigabit? So in my case, it's gigabit, but then it's 35 megabits up. And that's not gigabit service in my way of thinking. So many ISPs have a data cap calculated based on total received and total sent data added together. And that's what Xfinity does. So when my data of 191 gigabytes has been logged so far this month, what it's actually is the total number of gigabytes that I have downloaded and the total number I have uploaded added together. So it's not just what I've downloaded. So you get to that number a lot more quickly. And that's why data caps to me just really aren't fair. Now, to give them credit, and I will have to give Xfinity credit, at least they don't throttle your data if you exceed the 1.2 terabytes. They just charge you money. So unlimited data plans often require paying extra fees if you exceed the data cap. And I said earlier that that's reminiscent of 1990s cellular phone service voice minutes. And I think, honestly, today it's 2022, and we're at a time when internet service providers should be able to provide uncapped, unlimited service, and they should be able to provide symmetric service. Anyway, that's it for today. Please subscribe and like to the channel, and don't forget to hit that notification bell, and we'll see you next time.